Okay, so here we go again. This guy, as much as I'd like it to end, so we can all put it behind us, this guy just keeps popping up with his, I don't know how to even explain it. He goes out of his way calling a lot of other people imbeciles and how no one can do anything as good as he can, etc. Yet at the same time, it's really important to understand the information he's putting out there. Even though he has a way to put words together that can sound like there's something there that's got something that's verifiable and discoverable, if you don't understand the principle of how life really operates, you will fall for it. So this is about really unpacking that and how if you are a rusted on cult member of this guy's cult, this is not for you, just so time to jog on, because all you're going to do is get your back up and start with this vitriolic condemnation. I'm just done with that, guys. So if you're here to learn something you don't understand, fine, stick around. But if you're here to prove how right you are and get into self-righteous indignation, it's not worth your while, guys, because you're just going to have natural law come back on you. And those of you who don't understand it, just have a look at what kind of comments are going to fly back at you when you start firing off your vitriol. Right? You're going to get shown the mirror, and you're not going to understand why it's happening and how you've got no control, because you don't understand that you are initiating violence with the way that you're prosecuting your beliefs to be absolute truths, right? And your need to punish others, humiliate them if they don't agree with you, right? This is about people who want to learn, who don't have this fixed attachment that they want to protect. This is about you. If you're one of those, you'll get value out of this. If you're not, jog on. All right, so let's listen to what this guy says, because it's like an absolute doozy.
Here we go. For all you common law enthusiasts and Magna Carta and all the rest of it.
Okay, first thing he does is he conflates the 1215 Magna Carta with these so-called groups that are calling themselves common law. The two are nothing to do with each other. They're totally separate. And that's one of the biggest cons that's been running, and it's been running by the cabal. They've set it all up, so all the people who believe they're actually doing common law are not. You're actually falling for all the constructs they've put into place to make you believe you can get a win in the moment. That's not common law, right? Things to do with principle are not about winning in the moment. They're about enduring, sticking to principle, and that takes time to erode the monolith, right? And that requires more and more people to understand that principle is the only way to freedom. You can't have a short win for yourself in the moment. That's just an allure to get you to keep this structure in place. So let me read what this says. There's a widely held belief that Australia has many common law groups. We don't. The only people practicing common law are those that stand in defence of the common law articles of 39, 40 and 61 of MC 1215. MC is for Magna Carta, as they are expressions of the universal principles of morality binding on us all, regardless of personal opinion, prejudice or bias. That's really critical to understand, that right there. I'm not sure how many people will. Those who stand on principle do not sell knowledge. Now, he's about to mention someone in a moment who he's calling like some common law guru. He's not. He's someone who sells whatever it is that he's attached to, whatever his beliefs are. And most common law groups, what they call themselves common law, will sell you a remedy. That's not common law. Anything to do with selling freedom is not common law. The two are not the same thing. They're selling a belief that's been set up by the tricksters, the dark cabal, whatever you want to call them, dark priest class, the dark priest, sorry, not dark priest, but the ancient psychologists. There's different terms for them, right? The dark occult, right? They've set it all up to trap people. That's what the people he's going to mention in a moment, who he's referring to, they call themselves common law gurus. They're not. All right. Do not sell knowledge, because knowledge is universally discoverable and therefore cannot be the property of any one individual. Truth cannot be sold. If you are espousing truth, it doesn't go for sale, because it's discoverable by all. That's a really critical principle to understand. So let's see what else it says here. Common law articles.
Please understand this.
I've got to go back. It went too fast for me, didn't it? Let me just go back. There we go. All right. For a society to live under the principles of morality, there must be common law articles written into the Constitution. A constitution is the arrangement for the construction of a country, nation, or state. Articles 39, 40 and 61 of Magna Carta 1215 are the common law articles that bind government, so that's the public servants, to conduct itself under the principles of universal morality in order to have the mandate of the people. So in order for us to agree that we're going to live under this system, where there's a system of servants serving us, there needs to be an adherence to a certain set of standards, right? That's what a constitution is. It's got nothing to do with the people. It doesn't bind the people. Now this guy, this real intelligent guy that keeps calling himself and believing he's got all this knowledge, etc., will tell you the opposite in a moment. You'll hear that. Article 61 is a set of protocols the people agreed to follow in order to restore, I don't think it makes sense, agreed to follow in order to restore, that should be the moral standards, as the highest code of conduct when the state has breached its mandate to govern. So there needs to be some fail-safe in place where the people can rally around and have a unified approach. That's what Article 61 is. It's just an agreement to, if government goes rogue, the public servants, are no longer legitimate, that they're criminal. How do we people unite in a singular way? Because if we're all doing something different, nothing will happen, right? So there needs to be a way we unite in a singular way, and that's what Article 61 is. So any fair income constitution will have that in it. That is agreed to by the public servants, and it's bound to by them. We aren't bound to it. No one can make us do it, but if we don't have a set of standards of how we know that they understand that they can be pulled back into line and be made accountable for their criminality, if they don't have that they agree to, then how are we going to have proof that that's the agreement we all went ahead with in order to allow people to make decisions on our behalf? That structure has to be in place. So now I'm going to move on to what else.
Please understand this. I love you guys to death, but you can't agree the colour of an orange.
Well, that's why, because that's not common law. So no wonder people can't agree to, because they don't adhere to principles. So this is what he doesn't understand. He's calling groups that aren't common law, he's calling them common law. And if you find an actual common law group, they will agree because they're all coming off principle. There's no argument there. But these groups he's calling common law are not. But he doesn't have that knowledge, or he's deliberately ignoring that, one or the other.
And secondly, I don't care what was done before.
Now that's a real critical point here, right? He says, I don't care what was done before. Now how many times, if you've paid attention to what he says, does he bang on about the American Constitution? Now for somebody who doesn't care what's been done before, how come it matters now? And why does he bang on about the Bible if he doesn't care about what was done before, right? Massive contradictions, guys, right? And he goes out of his way to tell you about the American Constitution, how, that's the foundation and that's what he draws from. But he doesn't care what's been done before, right? But the funny part is that the 1215 Magna Carta is the bedrock of where the American Constitution was derived from. Funny about that. That's really bizarre how he doesn't know that. Is that an accident? Who's to know?
I didn't sign up for any of this shit. We're starting from scratch.
So he didn't sign up for things that he actually said that he agrees to in the past, which is the American Constitution. Now he's saying he didn't. It's like you've really got to be able to understand principle to see how flawed and what the level of contradiction this guy operates from.
Now, if you have the best idea, then you persuade us.
Here's the other thing. It's not up to anyone to persuade anybody else. If you are sovereign, you will care enough about your own discoveries, right? If you are relying on someone else to teach you, then you are already a slave. That's the biggest problem here. This is the biggest lie. And he's making it like it's someone else's responsibility to actually persuade you. That's not how sovereign people operate. They take their own education into their own hands. But he's now making like he only knows the truth and only he can persuade people. No one else can, because they don't know what they're talking about. You see the tricks? This is the part that you really need to start paying attention to.
But unlike Mike Holt, that champion of the common law,
now this is who I alluded to earlier, that he was going to start slagging someone off, right? This is brilliant.
When I asked him how many people he had, he said 200,000. I said, good. You got 25.67 million that you have to persuade. And he said, no, they're stupid. They'll follow. Thanks, mate. Good work.
Now this is brilliant, right? Because what you're about to hear is what he thinks of the 26.75 million? I don't know what it was, 79. You're about to hear what he thinks of them, right? And how he's going to persuade them. This is the best part, right? When someone else says they're stupid, and he's like knocking the guy who said they're stupid. Now let's hear what he says. This is an absolute humdinger.
You're so fucking stupid. Are you really that dumb? 25.69 million imbeciles in Australia. For fuck's sake, get off your asses. Look, I'm supposed to inspire you to take control of your country. Go fuck yourselves. You don't deserve a country. You, as I said, it galls me. The American adults have to come in and take care of these fucking idiots called Australians. You're an embarrassment. You're a fucking embarrassment. So all you hard fucking unionists out there, you fucking idiots. You're letting that stupid cunt, and I tell you what, that word no longer has any fucking meaning anymore. And if you're offended by it, get the fuck out of here. You don't deserve to be here. Ladies and gentlemen of Australia, you don't deserve your country. You lost your sovereignty. You gave it away. And if you don't like the fact the Americans are going to come in and clean up the mess, tough shit. Because I'm going to help them. Because you're too fucking stupid to survive. You, Australia, and I'll finish here. You Australians are like dodos.
All right, there you heard it from the horse's mouth, guys. Right there, he's told you what he really thinks of you. While he's knocking other people that say that Australians are stupid. Now, I don't know about you, but that didn't sound like someone who really thinks much of the people. And that's every single one of you, right? He's covered everyone, 26 or 25.69. I can never remember that number. He's covered all of you. Even if you're in his cult, you are in that figure, guys. So that's what he's told you he thinks about you. But if someone else says something about they're stupid, well, that's a problem. Now, this is how you influence people, right? This is what he says, you need to convince us. This is how he's going about convincing you. All right, so now we're going to look at the structure because he bangs on about the 1901, right? We're going to look at the structure that he uses as his foundational stone. Even though he knocks it, this is the structure he wants to work from, right? Because he's like, well, we've got to start somewhere. So why don't we start with something illegitimate? That's the best place to start. I can't think of a better way to do it, can you?
I didn't sign up for any of it. You better persuade all of us that you are right. But I don't need King John, who signed a document under duress, to give me the right to do anything. You, ladies and gentlemen.
Whoops, I actually jumped ahead. I forgot that this part was coming in. I'll need to go back and change that. So, what he's talking about is that someone called King John back in 1215 signed something which he didn't. He sealed an agreement, right? That's what he's talking about. And he's saying it doesn't have anything to do with him. Well, what he actually sealed was the binding agreement that allows for a system of public servants to be legitimate. So if he thinks that it's not something that matters to him, right, that you can constrain people from actually crushing your individual rights, that they can impose on them, and that there's a structure in place that gets rid of and makes them accountable if they do. If you don't think that's got anything to do with him, then fine, absolutely. However, maybe other people might have a different opinion, right? But that's the kind of leadership you're going with here, guys.
Every one of you, tall, short, fat, thin, black, white, Jew, Christian, Muslim, don't care. All law derives from you. You persuade those around you as to the benefits of your position, and that's it. All law derives from you. And everybody but everybody that came on before can go to hell. Because none of us signed up for this rubbish.
So he's saying that, the founding fathers, the ones he bangs on about, can go to hell. Yeah, the people who wrote the Bible, they can go to hell, although he draws reference to it quite often. All law derives from you, but how? Does he teach you how that happens? No, you never get taught how it happens, right? And the way he's meaning it in codified law, because in other things you'll see, he talks about how you get enumerated rights. That's codifying your rights. You can't do that, because then you'd have to have an endless list and you'd never be able to keep up with what they are, right? So if you're free, you don't have anyone listing out what your rights are. That's like slavery right there, because that ends up being a privilege. If it's not on the list, well, you're not allowed to do it. That's totally insane. But that's what this guy does. All right, let's move on. So this is where he works from, what I was talking about before when I jumped the gun. He works from the 1901, which is legislative tyranny, because the legislature is the Supreme Law Council, as in the Judicature Act of Section 71. The judicial power of the Commonwealth shall be vested in a federal Supreme Court to be called the High Court of Australia, and in such other federal courts as the Parliament creates, right? So now it's making Parliament the creator of who gets to be the arbiter of law, right? It's minions, people who are in the pay of Parliament and their servants. And in such other courts as it invests with federal jurisdiction. The word jurisdiction, if you don't understand what it means, juris, it's to do with law, diction, speak, that it's like you can speak the law. Only gods get to do that. So they've made themselves gods right there. In the High Court, the High Court shall consist of a Chief Justice and so many other justices, no less than 2, as the Parliament prescribes. So everything the master tells you. This is basically the plantation owner right there, just spread out into a group that calls themselves the legislature, which are meant to be public servants, not your masters, right? But that's how they did it there. As you can see below how it's set up, this is the current system. It's always been this way since Federation. You've got the Legislative Parliament. They're in charge of the courts. They're the ones who are meant to assess, the separation of power. They're meant to assess, the legitimacy of legislation, but how can they if they're owned by Parliament, right? Same with the military, police and prisons. They're all owned by it, even though they swear to the monarch. And the monarch, if you see over here, the figurehead is pushed off to the side, like they're just some kind of figurative thing, like they're just a decoration, this ceremonial thing that they do. That's how they've done it. That's how they pushed off their true power. Right, now go into the 1688 Bill of Rights, etc., that talks about how that was all done 100 years before Federation, and that's all stuff you can find. So that's what he's going off as his model, and this is obviously what it looks like and what happens. Right, when you have this, you've got these corporate tribunals, which is corpus juris, which have been running that for years. You've got these corporate mercenaries, they call them the police, and you've got the slave labour camps, which are the prisons, right? Because everything is an outdoor prison here. It's been like that since the day it was set up, and then when they turned into Federation, they just codified it. No difference, right? And look at the characteristics that you're going to draw when you have this system. You're going to have people with cowardice, self-righteousness, arrogance, the unresponsive, the dishonest, the manipulative, vindictive, judgmental, narcissistic, authoritarian, predatory, coercive, aggressive, ignorant. We can go on forever, right? That's who you attract in this system. And what he's talking about, you're going to have the same stuff coming back, because that's what he's using as his starting point, right? So why would you start on a lie? Make sense of that. This, and look where the people are, right at the bottom. Now we're going to talk about the thing that he's saying King John signed, which he didn't, which he sealed, right? So then there can be such a thing as a system of public servants. We're going to take a look at what that actually is, that he's saying got nothing to do with him, oh, I wasn't there, I wasn't involved, yada yada, right? So we're going to show you what he's dismissing. So he's dismissing the natural order of creation, which is obviously there's natural law. Out of that comes the rule of law, right? That's the democratic rule of law. And we, the people, are the ones who understand what that means, right? Then we're next, and then we sit above the administration of service to the people, this system of public servants, and obviously they are right underneath that. Now, if that's the natural order, and you just saw what I showed you previous, you see it's inverted, right? It's because people don't know basic principles. Now we're going to look at what the term of consent of the governed means. Now this is what he's saying is dismissed, because that's what King John sealed, right? He was under duress for sure because he was a criminal. No criminals go and do things because they want to, right? If they're doing things that are actually valuable and are needed for society to prosper, it's not going to be because they want to, right? It's going to be under duress. Just like if you're bringing the criminal into a court, they're not going to do it because they want to be there. They're doing it because they've got no other choice, because the people have, made sure that they need to come and answer for their crimes. So you can see that the people are the Supreme Law Council. That's how we do the separation of power. We need to be the ones who have the final say, right? Here it is. Government is allowed to exist. This is what was sealed back in 1215, which he thinks is rubbish, right? And he's not bound to. Allowed to exist only if the people remain in judicial and legislative authority over Parliament and the monarch. Read that again if you don't understand it. That specifically means through common law trial by jury, in which the people have the power to annul government-created law, which is legislation. That's why we are the supreme legislature. We get to annul anything they create if it's immoral, when it infringes on individual rights and or moral conscience, right? That's how we control. We have the levers of power in our hands. That's what King John sealed. Right? If you think that's rubbish, then go back to the slavery that you've been enjoying all these years. Right? And that's still in place today, guys. It's just because the people don't know about it and they've been sucked in by charlatans like this guy. Democracy requires the right of all adults to sovereign judgment on the laws under which they voluntarily agree to live. That's a very critical principle to understand, guys. Everything's about voluntary consent. And if you don't have control over that, it's not consent. It's enslavement. And the way the system's running and what he's talking about, and you'll see it later when he talks about judges being elected, is more of that involuntary system where you are enslaved. And let's go on further. This is what it actually looks like, the correct system. The people, we are the judiciary and the Supreme Law Council. You see how that from there we are chosen, right, to be in those positions. So that's the trial by jury structure. And then we get to decide on the quality of what the head of state allows, that gives royal assent to any legislation. We decide on the quality of that, not the monarch. They don't have any sovereign right to actually judge on that. We, the people, do, because we're the ones affected by it. It just makes logical sense, guys. It's really easy. And then the head of state is in charge of making sure the legislative branch doesn't violate our rights, nor does the executive branch, right? And as soon as any of those two branches do, the monarch needs to rectify it. If they don't, then they are delegitimized. They are criminal. The whole structure has to be, dismantled, right? And then we start again. That's the true nature of how that's supposed to work. Now, he thinks that's rubbish, right? He's telling you. Anything came before me, I didn't sign up to it, it's got nothing to do with me, it's all crap. That's what he's saying. Well, you show me a way that how you can go about making sure that if you're going to have a system of service, how it would be with the people in charge. Show me a different way. So here's some more knowledge on this with the trial by jury, the Supreme Law Council. 12 members of the community assembled from the Supreme Law Council that taps into natural law by drawing on our moral faculties. It has the supreme authority to judge the justice of government legislation as well as decide on the moral character of the nation. The mechanism that keeps the practice of equity and justice for all in place. There is no other. Equity means that all people are tried under the law equally and have equal influence over the law. Now, how the system works today, if you have someone like a judge, right, he's going to tell you about it, that we elect a judge, then they become the one who's the supreme judger. One individual. Now, even in the Bible, the thing that he bangs on about that he thinks is valid, it even says there that you can't have one man above another because all men are created equal. So then, it's totally like ludicrous, the things that he puts forward. It goes against the things that he even promotes, right? He bangs on about the Bible, he doesn't understand the principles that are embedded in there. It forbids government to execute any of its legislation by punishing violators in any case whatsoever without first getting the consent of the people. That's consent to the government. So if they pass legislation and the people say, yes, in this case the legislation is appropriate, the party who's been accused actually did breach moral principle, then that's when it can actually be prosecuted. But it's the people who decide, through a jury of the people. In this way, the people always hold their liberties in their own hands and never surrender them, even for a moment, in the hands of government. Sovereignty is specifically embodied in and exercised through the implementation of trial by jury in accord with the constitutional common law of the land. And there's only one, and that's Magna Carta 1215. Not the entire thing, only the common law articles that are embedded in it. People don't understand that. You need to understand it's not the entire document, it's only the articles of common law. There's only a few. Treason is any act adjudged to undermine or be in conflict with the people's absolute sovereignty, ordained by the 1215 permanent constitution of the people.
You're good because you'll be able to start taking control of this nation the way you want. And as I said again, for the newcomers, how is that practically implemented? Because we will have a third tier of government called the local counties, where you get to elect your legislature, judiciary, and your executive. How cool is that? So you get to elect the council. Separately, you get to elect the sheriffs, and separately, you get to elect the judges. How cool is that?
So cool. We get to elect who's going to enslave us. The one individual that's going to judge over us. It's so cool. We're going to have such a different system. Like this is the madness, right? And if people don't want to start learning principle, you're going to keep falling for this, right? And we need to start moving past this. People always talk about, you're dividing the freedom movement. No, the truth doesn't divide anything. It just brings the lie into light, right? And that's all it's about. If you want to attach the lie, take responsibility for it, but be honest. Yeah, I'd rather attach the lie because, it appeals to my emotions and it appeals to my biases and prejudices. Very few people actually have the courage to stand on truth dispassionately. That's a critical word, dispassionately. If you are one of those people, if you've made it this far, then here's something that you can make use of. Okay, so if you're serious about your own education, this is the site that has got pretty much the majority of things you require to understand the principles that are embedded in the laws of nature that we as living beings have understood and I guess have devised the system which adheres to those principles. And so this site obviously is magnacarta1215.com. All of Magna Carta is not what we're about. It's about the articles of common law. Common law is just the man's best understanding through the conduit of the conscience of how the laws of nature operate. That's all common law really means. So just want to scroll down. Got some info here. You can read that in your own time, but here's a real quick explainer of the 1901 Commonwealth of Australia Constitution, why it's a fraud, why it's your ticket to slavery, and basically why you're going to stay imprisoned if you keep following it and thinking there's some validity. So obviously the title's a bit different. It's called the 1901 Crime and Punishment Manifesto, so you can watch that. It's only about 2.5 minutes, so it's nice and quick. And then I want to take you here because this really explains the whole 1215 Magna Carta. Just scroll right down to the bottom here, and it's the frequently asked Q&As, right? You click on that, download that. That explains it. It's got a bunch of other things about how to deal with the police. It's got a lot of relevant information to today. Also the history of what the 1215 actually was as far as an agreement that allows for a system of public servants who are accountable to we the people. That's all it really is. So download that. That's got in there. It's got it's about 15 pages, I think. So there's really in-depth explanation into history, today, and the oath, what that really means. So, you know, if you're really interested about taking ownership of your own learning and stop relying on other people, because if you're a true sovereign, you don't rely on the word of others, right? It just doesn't work like that. You need to take that into your own hands and figure it out for yourself. And there's resources here if you want to. You use your own discernment to decide whether that sits with your inherent understanding of the true nature of morality or whether it sits outside of it. And can you distinguish the difference between your biases, prejudices, and your conscience, right? Not everyone's capable of doing that. So if you're in that space where you're ready to do that, here's this place where you can start activating and really advancing your learning, because without the knowledge, you can't do the next step, right? Everything starts with your knowing. All right, that's it.